Case 7. Selection Decision Making. After walking through cases involving planning, recruiting, validation, and interviewing, this case will allow you to see the final product of the staffing system, selection. The selection decision in this case is based on a small applicant pool vying for a position. As in the previous exercise, develop a detailed selection plan for this position. Determine what you want to measure by analyzing KSAOs from the job description and the information on organizational culture in the case, and fitting the selection measures into the plan format as shown in Table 8.2 in the book. See File K7 Part 2. It should be noted that there are some significant shortcomings in the current selection plan for this job. Clearly, there is no information specific to Tanglewood's culture and values. The use of standardized forms and procedures cannot adequately address this information. Candidates' history and experiences should be carefully considered. Develop assessment scores based on several multiple predictor methods described in your book. This entails developing distinct scores for each applicant based on clinical prediction, unit weighting, and rational weighting schemes. For each method, develop a list of your top 3 finalists to provide to the regional manager. Compare these to a multiple hurdle selection procedure that uses test scores as a first stage to find the 5 strongest candidates, and then uses interviews and resumes to select the top 3 finalists. Which of the methods do you believe works best? Why? There are a very wide variety of possible answers to this question. The clinical weighting scheme should involve students carefully reading through all the assembled information and making a subjective determination of who is the best candidate. Typically, people are happy with the results of a clinical prediction procedure because it involves their own judgments extensively, but the clinical prediction model does not do a good job of providing a system which could be followed by other locations, which is important because a precedent is being set here. The unit weighting scheme would result in the following scores, so the top candidates in order are Jane Heckman, Thomas Resner, and Maxine Renoir. See File K7 Part 2. There are a wide variety of possible rational weighting schemes that you could utilize. Simply by examining the selection plan provided in Answer 1, it appears that the biopsy inventory should receive more weight. The multiple hurdle method generally produces the same, or similar, results regardless of the order in which information is considered. The ranking of resumes is even more subjective than the clinical prediction method, although it does have the advantage of allowing for consideration of whether the individuals under consideration have extensive experience within Tanglewood, and also to consider certain specific background factors, like entrepreneurial experiences, that might make someone an especially good candidate. You are making a recommendation for who should be considered a candidate for hiring based on your read of the data. Using your recommendations, Tanglewood will develop a panel of individuals who will be involved in the final selection decision with interviews. Who do you think should be involved in this process from Tanglewood based on the discussion of decision makers in the textbook? What does each decision maker add to the process? You should consult the organizational structure information in the introduction. The organization's top management might need to be involved in the decision-making process because they have a strong interest in seeing the management of this store being handled in a specific way. Top management team members can get a sense for whether the newcomer will fulfill the core values of the organization in a way that represents their strategic conception of the store's future goals. If it is possible, the outgoing manager might be included in the decision-making process. He or she will have the unique perspective afforded to one who has performed the core work tasks in the past. Of course, it is useful to use incumbents as part of the selection process only if the incumbent A did a good job and B remains committed to serving Tanglewood's best interests. For a highly participative organization like Tanglewood, it might be advisable to include some of the new manager's subordinates in the decision-making process. These subordinates should have an opportunity to see how the new manager interacts with them. Allowing subordinates to contribute to the process will also reinforce the importance of the communication across organizational levels that has been the hallmark of Tanglewood's philosophy and values. Based on the 3 previous portions of the assignment, develop an official guide to selection that can be supplied to all the stores. This official guide should provide the information from the selection plan, suggestions for how to combine predictors, and guidelines for managers on who should be involved in the final decision. The decision makers do not necessarily need to be the same ones participating in the selection decision for the Spokane flagship store. The development of communications from a central corporate human resources department to specific locations is an important issue for any retail chain, but it also is often an issue for other organizations as well. This question essentially involves formatting the information from the previous questions into a single document that can be disseminated for the purpose of educating managers on how to implement the new system.